People say wolves are the most ruthless predators of the forest. But on that freezing winter evening, old hunter Ivan discovered something different. Sometimes a wild beast carries more humanity than people do. He risked his own life to free a wounded wolf from a steel trap, never imagining that exactly 1 week later, that same animal would return to his cabin and scratch at his window in the dead of night. The wolf did not come for revenge. It came to lead him somewhere deep inside the forgotten taiga, to a place untouched for decades, and what Ivan found there would change everything he believed about loyalty, kindness, and the strange way good deeds return across generations. Stay until the end, because this story is unlike anything you've heard before. The snowstorm arrived before sunset. Thick white wind swept across the frozen taiga, covering old tracks and bending the dark pine trees under heavy ice. Ivan pulled his fur coat tighter and walked slowly through the forest with his rifle hanging behind his shoulder. At 68 years old, he knew these woods better than most men knew their own homes. But that evening, something felt wrong. Then he heard it. Not a growl, not the cry of a hunter. A painful, trembling whimper. Ivan stopped beside a cluster of frozen bushes and looked down. Half buried beneath the snow was a large gray wolf. One of its front legs was crushed inside a steel trap. Fresh blood stained the white snow around it. The animal tried to pull away, but every movement only tightened the cruel jaws deeper into its flesh. For a long moment, neither of them moved. The wolf stared at Ivan with glowing amber eyes, not full of rage, but pain, exhaustion, fear. Ivan slowly removed his gloves, his breath shaking in the cold air. He knew one wrong move could end his life right there in the snow. Hungry wolves had attacked men before, but as the storm howled through the trees, Ivan quietly whispered, "Easy now. I'm not here to hurt you." And for some strange reason, the wolf stopped growling. Ivan lowered himself carefully into the snow, never taking his eyes off the wolf. The steel trap was old but powerful, the kind that shattered bone if left too long. Frost had already formed around the animal's wounded leg, and each breath leaving its mouth came out weak and uneven. The wolf suddenly bared its teeth. A deep growl rolled through the cold air. Ivan froze instantly. One lunge, and his throat would be gone. But instead of reaching for the rifle on his back, the old hunter slowly extended his trembling hand toward the trap. His fingers were stiff from the cold, and sweat rolled down his neck despite the freezing wind. "Easy, easy, brother," he whispered softly, like calming a frightened child. "I know it hurts." The wolf's ears pulled back. Its body shook with pain, yet strangely, it didn't attack. Ivan grabbed the frozen jaws of the trap and tried to force them apart. Nothing happened. The metal wouldn't move. For a terrifying second, he realized he might lose his fingers trying. The wolf let out another sharp cry and jerked violently, almost knocking Ivan into the snow. But the old man refused to step away. Then, with one final burst of strength, the rusted mechanism cracked open. The wolf pulled its bleeding leg free and stumbled backward into the storm. Ivan slowly stood, breathing hard, expecting the beast to disappear into the darkness. But it didn't. The wolf remained there between the trees, staring directly into his eyes. And before vanishing into the snow, it gave one strange, almost human look, as if it was trying to remember his face forever. The storm passed by mourning, but the feeling it left behind stayed with Ivan for days. At first, he tried to forget the wolf entirely. He repaired fishing nets, chopped wood behind the cabin, and drank hot tea beside the old iron stove. Life in the taiga had taught him not to dwell on strange things for too long. But something had changed. Every evening, as darkness covered the forest, Ivan felt eyes watching him from beyond the trees. Not once, not twice, every single night. Sometimes he caught movement near the edge of the woods, a gray shadow slipping silently between the pines. Other times he heard slow footsteps circling the cabin after midnight, snow crunching softly, then stopping the moment he opened the door. Yet no tracks remained by morning. Soon the village started talking. At the small store near the frozen river, neighbors whispered that wolves had grown aggressive this winter. One hunter claimed an entire pack followed him for miles through the forest. Another swore he heard howling outside his barn just before dawn. "Bad sign," the old villagers muttered. "The taiga wakes up angry when winter gets too deep." Ivan said nothing, but deep inside, he could not stop thinking about those amber eyes trapped in the snow. Then, on the 7th night, something happened that made the old hunter's blood run cold. Just after midnight, a slow scratching sound came from his window. The scratching came again, slow, careful, almost human. Ivan opened his eyes in the darkness and sat up beside the dying fire. For a moment he thought the storm had returned, but then the sound came once more, right against the frozen glass of his window. Scratch! Scratch! The old hunter reached for the rifle beside his bed and slowly moved toward the door. Outside, the taiga was buried under silver moonlight. Snow drifted through the wind like ghostly smoke between the trees. Then Ivan saw it. A large gray wolf stood beside the porch, the same scarred leg, the same amber eyes. "It's you," Ivan whispered under his breath. The wolf did not growl. It did not move closer. Instead, it stared directly at him, then slowly turned toward the forest. After a few steps, the animal stopped and looked back again, waiting, as if it wanted Ivan to follow. Every instinct told the old hunter this was madness. Men disappeared in these woods every winter. Some were never found at all. Yet something deep inside him said this was no ordinary beast and no ordinary night. So Ivan grabbed his lantern, wrapped himself in his heavy coat, and stepped into the freezing darkness. The wolf immediately began walking into the taiga, not too fast, not too far ahead, always making sure the old man was still behind him. And as the cabin lights disappeared in the distance, Ivan realized something unsettling. The wolf already knew exactly where it was taking him. The deeper they went into the taiga, the quieter the world became. Soon even the sound of the wind disappeared. Only the crunch of Ivan's boots and the soft movements of the wolf remained in the darkness ahead. Snow reached almost to the old hunter's knees, and frozen branches clawed at his coat, as if the forest itself wanted him to turn back. But the wolf never hesitated. It moved through the woods with strange confidence, weaving between ancient pines and fallen trees, as though it had walked this path many times before. After nearly an hour, Ivan realized something frightening. There were no hunting trails here, no human tracks, nothing. No one from the village had entered this part of the forest for decades. Several times Ivan nearly lost sight of the animal completely. Each time, the wolf stopped farther ahead and waited patiently beneath the moonlight until the old man caught up again, almost like a guide. The cold became unbearable. Ivan's hands burned from frost beneath his gloves, and his lantern flickered violently in the wind. More than once he considered turning back before sunrise swallowed him forever. Then he noticed something unusual. The forest was changing. The trees grew thinner. The ground beneath the snow became rocky and uneven. High cliffs slowly rose around them until the taiga transformed into a narrow hidden passage between dark stone walls. Ivan's breathing slowed. He had hunted these lands since childhood, yet he had never seen this place before. The wolf climbed over a fallen ridge and disappeared ahead for several seconds. Ivan hurried after it, and suddenly stopped dead in his tracks. Beyond the rocks, hidden deep inside the frozen Ushili, a faint orange light was glowing in the darkness. Ivan stepped carefully through the narrow passage, his lantern shaking in his hand. And then he saw it clearly. A small wooden house stood hidden between the cliffs, half covered by stone and snow, as if the mountain itself had been protecting it for years. The roof sagged under thick ice. Old moss climbed the walls and the windows were dark. Except for one. A faint warm glow flickered behind the frozen glass. Ivan's heart began to pound. No roads led here. No smoke should have existed this deep in the wilderness. Yet thin, gray smoke slowly curled from the chimney into the freezing night sky. The wolf walked toward the house and stopped beside the porch. It did not enter. Instead, the animal quietly sat near the doorway and looked at Ivan once more. Those amber eyes no longer seemed dangerous now. They looked almost familiar. Then Ivan noticed something strange carved into the old wooden frame near the door. A symbol, one he had seen long ago as a child. Suddenly, memories he had forgotten for decades rushed back into his mind, stories his grandfather once told him about a hidden shelter deep in the taiga, a place no outsider was ever supposed to find. Ivan slowly placed his trembling hand on the frozen door handle, and from somewhere inside the house, he heard the crackling sound of a burning fire. The wooden door opened with a long, painful creak. Warm air immediately rushed against Ivan's frozen face. Inside, the house looked untouched by time. A small fire burned quietly inside the stone stove. Dust covered the shelves, old coats still hung near the entrance, and melted candle wax dripped across a heavy wooden table as if someone had left only yesterday. But there was no one there. Ivan stepped deeper inside, his boots creaking against the old floorboards. Then his eyes stopped on something lying beside the fire, a stack of letters, yellowed with age. His hands trembled as he picked one up. The handwriting felt painfully familiar. Suddenly his breathing stopped. It belonged to his grandfather. The same grandfather who vanished in the taiga more than 40 years ago without a trace. Ivan slowly opened the diary beside the letters. The pages spoke of brutal winters, hunger, and a wounded wolf pack he once saved during a deadly storm. Day after day his grandfather fed them, protected them from hunters, and built this hidden shelter beside the cliffs. Then Ivan found the final entry. If one of them ever returns with a man, the old handwriting read, it means the forest still remembers kindness. Tears filled Ivan's eyes. All these years, the answer had been here. Not treasure, not gold, but proof that goodness survives far longer than people do. Outside the doorway, the wolf still waited silently beside the porch, guarding the house like it had been doing for generations. That night, Ivan did not return to the village. He sat quietly beside the fire for hours, reading every page his grandfather had left behind while the storm howled outside the hidden house. Sometimes he looked through the frosted window toward the porch. The wolf never left. It lay silently near the doorway, watching the forest beyond the cliffs, like an old guardian that had finally completed its duty. And for the first time in many years, Ivan no longer felt alone. By morning, the storm had passed. Golden sunlight slowly touched the frozen mountains, revealing the hidden valley that had slept beneath the taiga for decades. Ivan stepped outside with tired eyes and looked toward the wolf. For several long seconds, neither moved. Then the animal quietly stood up. The old hunter expected it to disappear into the forest forever. But before leaving, the wolf stopped beside him one last time and gently lowered its head, almost like gratitude. Then it vanished between the snow-covered trees without a sound. Ivan never saw the wolf again. But from that day forward, he kept the hidden house alive. He repaired the roof, restored the old stove, and protected the place his grandfather once called home. And every winter, strange tracks still appeared near the cliffs after heavy snowfall, as if the forest itself continued watching over the man who once chose kindness instead of fear, because sometimes the good we do does not disappear. It simply waits for the right moment to return. And you? Would you have followed a wild wolf into the frozen wilderness? Tell me honestly in the comments below. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like and subscribe. so you won't miss the next hidden story waiting deep inside the wilderness.